This one's gonna be a bit off the cuff. This morning, the Pokemon Company showed us a creepy little horror video showcasing a new Mega Evolution. It was Mega Victreebel, and the reception has been divisive, which got me thinking to how the reveal of Mega Dragonite a little while ago was also a bit divisive. And so that got me thinking about Megas in general. What are the expectations of what a Mega is supposed to look like? What is a good Mega next to a bad Mega? There's a lot of conversation taking place about these things right now, and I had a bit to say about it. Before any of that though, context, let's talk about what actually was shown today and what I thought about it. 2 days ago, we got this creepy tweet, YouTube premiere of something for Pokemon Legends ZA with a viewer discretion advised. That's unusual. And this picture, I mean, it doesn't look like Pokemon. Looks way too realistic to be Pokemon. I love that they are leaning into this like found footage horror vibe. They're really good at harnessing horror vibes, considering that they make Pokemon. I remember they did something similar to this for the Ultra Beasts a little while back, which were terrifying because the Ultra Beasts are just horrifying even without a horror coat of paint. And then there's also been some like animal wildlife footage reveals. I remember Galarian Ponyta was revealed that way, and also I think Grafaiai in Scarlet and Violet had something similar. So I saw this tweet and I'm like, okay, we got one of these. And yeah, that was in fact the case. This morning we saw the video posted, the case of the sweet scent incident. Sweet scent, huh? That gives me grass type vibes. Interesting. I was really thinking it'd be a ghost type. But all right, we get this video going through this abandoned looking place. Don't worry, they got permission to be here. They made it clear that was the case. I can't believe how good this looks, but then I see the character model show up and I'm like, oh yeah, this was in fact made by Game Freak. I actually loved all of the fake out moments too, like the Esper at the end of the hallway and like that one bit where a bunch of Noibat are like flying out and spooking them. It's great. Like this whole thing was honestly really well put together. You see all these little pools of purple liquid something on the ground, and before you know it, bursting out from the wall like the Kool-Aid Man is this giant out of control creature spewing poison like there's no tomorrow, and bouncing around on his big old belly, we get this Mega Victreebel. And of course, he means no harm. He was just a little, little enthusiastic. There's this worker and his Victreebel, really cute. From there, we started getting footage and images. We got like the official render that looks just like the Mega Dragonite render that we ended up getting. And people got a good look at this thing. I do think that this was a leaked evolution, not a design that people saw, but they knew that Victreebel was on the market to get a Mega. I don't know how these people learn these things. I don't care to know, but I was seeing an awful lot of talk about that. So I'm sure people had lots of different ideas in their head as to what a Mega Victreebel could look like, and it doesn't seem like this is what people were hoping for. He's big, he's chubby, he's hopping around on his tiny little flapping little leaves. He's got his big puffy lips on the top. You give him real piranha plant energy. I don't know though, the more that I look at this design, the more that it makes all the sense in the world. He's a pitcher plant. He's got a bunch of acid and poison, collecting in there. So what do you do when you megafy that idea? You give him way more poison. So much so that he has to tie himself down with his stem just to keep all the poison from bursting out. It seems like Megas, especially this new wave of Megas that we've gotten so far, even though we just got the 2 of them, are all about emphasizing one element and making it larger while shrinking another element and making it smaller. Victreebel lost his big leaves, they're way smaller now, but his belly, as well as the leaf on the top of his head, have gotten way bigger, and that just changes his overall vibe. Now he's bouncing around, he's chunky. I bet he's going to lose speed, because of course he will. I like that he balances a line between goofy and scary. You know, the video made him out to be scary until we like really got a good look at him and turned out, oh, he's just a goofy little fella after all. There are so many Pokemon out there that like balance on that threshold really elegantly. Look at Gengar. Gengar is a terrifying menace of a Pokemon. Under the right circumstances, Gengar might be the scariest Pokemon of them all. He's also a goofball, sticking his tongue out and pulling pranks. He's silly and he's scary. I think Victreebel is also a Pokemon that rides this line. You know, he's goofy. Like when we think of Victreebel, we already think of him, you know, like jumping up and eating James, being this like big love bug, but also he is kind of terrifying. You know, he's spewing this acid uncontrollably. He has a massive amount of poison just stored in his belly in there. Like if he eats James the way that he used to eat James, James is gonna become a skeleton. You know, when that mouth is closed and he's grinning, you know, he looks adorable. But like when that thing is open and its teeth are showing, you know, you put that thing in the dark and I don't want to mess with it. I really think it lands for me and it hits a lot of the notes that like highlight what makes Victreebel unique, but also changing his form, changing his shape, making him move a little bit differently, act a little bit differently, giving him a lot more inherent power, which I think really works. So why is there a large amount of people who are looking at this design and are immediately put off by it? Well, let's explore that. First of all, I do acknowledge the Gen 1 frustration. You know, we got Victreebel here with a Mega. Last time we got Dragonite. And even when X and Y initially came out, a large portion of the Megas that we received were Kanto. Kanto Gen 1 Pokemon have been getting preferential treatment for a really long time. And yeah, I acknowledge that. I understand that that is a frustration. However, I would counter argue that when's the last time you've seen anything about Victreebel? I don't think in the grand scheme of Gen 1 Pokemon, this is a largely celebrated one. I don't think he's very meta relevant. You know, you don't see him too often on merchandise. He does have a anime fame thanks to James's Victreebel, but that Victreebel hasn't, you know, been on television in decades. So all in all, while I would also like to see Mega Evolutions given to later generation Pokemon, and I'm sure that we will see many of those. You know, if you are to give a Kanto Pokemon another Mega, I do think this is a decent Pokemon to choose. Now, he definitely does look goofy as well. This is something that I'm sure a lot of people were hoping to not be the case. And maybe it's also just because Dragonite just happened, which people also had issue with, that it's just sort of like one after another. I don't personally mind a goofy design because, as I said, you know, under the right lighting, under the right conditions, any goofy Pokemon that you can think of can also look terrifying. Think of a cute Pokemon and find fan art out there of someone drawing them in a really creepy light, and you'll see what I mean. I don't think we can take a look at this design and, like, you know, that image that's been floating around of his upside down face and hold that against the entire character design. Obviously, many people enjoy him for being goofy, and I do too. I think that's great. But all throughout Mega history, there has been a very good balance of both sides. For every Mega Gengar and Aggron and Sableye, there are also Mega Slowbro and Mega Ampharos. So I think this Pokemon fits right in. When Mega Dragonite was first revealed, I made a video talking a little bit about it, but I can go into a bit more detail about my thoughts now that it's been like a number of weeks and I've been sitting with my thoughts about Mega Dragonite. I like Mega Dragonite as well. You know, I like his big tail with the multicolored jewel at the end. You know, the big wings I do like. I do think it's a little silly that the wings are on his head. You know, head wings are just a hard design to make work, especially since he has his normal dragon wings still on him. But I've seen a lot of footage of Mega Dragonite in movement, and I do think that he works a lot better in movement than he does as a still image. You know, maybe that's the problem. Maybe the renders that Game Freak has been showing off for these Pokemon have just not been very flattering. Because I feel like these images are the ones that get shared around and people are like, oh my goodness, this is ridiculous. But then you look at like in-game screenshots and like actual footage of the Pokemon moving, because right, these Pokemon aren't just still images, they are creatures that move and behave. Suddenly they look a lot more natural, a lot more like creatures. The most critical thing that I could say about Mega Dragonite is that I don't think it should have been the very first new Mega revealed. If their aim was to wow people, was to really like blow people's socks off with the first brand new Mega since the 3DS. If he is a more subtle design, not nearly as striking or groundbreaking as a design, so I think that left people underwhelmed. That maybe caused, you know, a bit of that stir online. I think if, you know, I'm sure they have a Mega that they're reluctant to show right now that could have been a more grandiose return of the mechanic. I'm looking around at all of the previous Mega designs that we've grown accustomed to over the years, and I think many of them share in the same design philosophies that these two new ones seem to have. You know, Mega Sableye, give him a really big jewel. Mega Sharpedo, give him a really big nose. Mega Alakazam, increase the amount of spoons he has. Mega Bayonet, up the creepy factor. Mega Manectric, he's just literally a walking lightning bolt symbol. I can absolutely 1000% believe Dragonite and Victreebel to have been amongst this classic group of Mega designs. And, you know, we'd be using them as examples against the new Megas today if they were a part of that original group. Which brings me to a question that somebody else asked online in bad faith, but, you know, I do think that it's a worthy question to explore. Why did we ask for Megas back in the first place? What is it about Mega Evolution that really resonates with people more than Z moves, more than Gigantamaxing, more than every other gimmick that Pokemon has introduced over the last few generations? Something about Mega Evolution specifically really lands with people, and I'm curious as to what that is. You know, I think on the surface, it just sounds super cool, giving Pokemon evolutions beyond evolutions. You're getting a Pokemon that evolves 3 times and giving it a 4th, like that just breaks people's brains and makes them go crazy. It's a chance for old forgotten Pokemon to return to the meta, make them stronger, make them more relevant, which is really great if that happens to be one of your favorite Pokemon, while also making the Pokemon that are already really strong even more powerful and even more dominant. I do think that nostalgia is playing a big role here. X and Y are like over 10 years old at this point. These were the first ever battle gimmicks ever revealed. I think there's just a big bias towards it being the first one / the good one. So people have been asking for it back because for a long time now, people have been kind of clamoring for Pokemon to return to what it used to do because everything that it, you know, is doing now is just not enough for a lot of people, which is so interesting to me because I think people forget that in the original X and Y, there were not a lot of Mega Pokemon available for you to use. You know, the professor gave you a Mega Stone of one of the Kanto starters. You got a gift Mega Lucario, like mandatory in the story, thanks to the gym leader Karina. And like maybe a few other sparse Mega Stones are available before the Elite Four, but most of them are available in the post game. So you're not using them on your team. And Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire are even worse, I believe. And they are, you know, the only other games to have introduced a batch of Mega designs, but I don't think any of them are available in the main story, aside maybe the like Latios or Latias that you fly over the world with, and like maybe one of the primal legendaries. It does seem like Megas have a much more prevalent role in ZA, which is very good to see. I'm really excited about that. I'm sure just by everything we've seen so far, we will have access to many of these Megas throughout the story of the game, as well as being able to see these rogue Megas in the wild. So we're going to have way more exposure to these designs than we ever had on a natural playthrough in Kalos. I think that gives a lot of these mega forms like a new lease on life, honestly. We're going to be seeing them in more than just their primary PNGs online. We're going to be seeing them moving and battling and just animated, you know? And I think that in that context of like living, breathing Pokemon animation, many of these designs that people find questionable on the surface will start to feel better, feel more natural. I'll never forget in Scarlet and Violet seeing Iron Bundle for the first time and not being hugely impressed. I was like, oh, it's just a robot Delibird. Okay, nothing really interesting to see here. And then in one of his attack animations, he like shot his head at me. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were packing heat. And I think looking at the little bit of footage that we've seen so far of Mega Victreebel, I think this is going to be a Pokemon that follows a similar script to that. You know, I think a lot of people were surprised. I think a lot of people who like maybe saw the leaks, you know, had different ideas in their head for like maybe months. I don't know how long people were aware of this thing. And you know, they saw cool fan arts, all of these rumors, and they got themselves really hyped in their heads to see this design that maybe didn't meet those expectations. But you know, give it a year. Well, the longer amount of time we have with a Pokemon, the more used to them we become, and the more, you know, welcoming we are to their strangeness. I think strangeness is a feature for a Pokemon design rather than a bug. Don't worry, there are still plenty more Megas to reveal, I'm sure of it. I'm sure there will be a Mega that is much more akin to your personal tastes, even if Victreebel isn't. And even if not, I'm sure your favorite original Mega design will be available for you to use as well. You know, give it a chance. Be open-minded. I think that seeing Mega Victreebel just sort of bouncing around on his tummy and spitting out poison at people, I think will be a more delightful thing to witness than you might think it is. I'll welcome just about any Pokemon design with open arms. You know, I've been a Pokemon fan for ages and ages, and I don't think I've ever experienced a Pokemon is not what it used to be feeling. So this, to me, is just another wonderful design in a regularly scheduled program of wonderful designs. And yeah, I felt like sharing those thoughts here today. I may very well use this on my team. That's just how much I have kind of he's endeared himself to me. I'm very, very interested to hear what you all think. You know, I'm responding to a, you know, subsect of people who I saw reacting to this design, speaking about this design, discussing about it, but maybe you think differently. Maybe you think that this is a lovely little creature, or maybe you think this is an abomination. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think of Mega Victreebel. Let me know what you think about Mega Dragonite. What sort of Mega designs do you hope for when a Mega reveal is about to happen? What are the aspects that you look for? I'm very curious what you think, but for now, I think that's everything I had to say on the matter. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble for a while. I'm sure I will be back with more soon, but for now, have a lovely rest of your day. Take care.